Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You get more information about the show and previous shows at our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my two guests today, and they are um, Brian Holcomb and also Laura Laura
Depta,
Depta
Peal.
Peal. Thank you. And why don't you wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this, guys? So if you're watching it, that's Laura and Brian. And I'm really excited about today's show because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite local theaters, and that's a Tryon Little Theater in what's cool about it, in your absolutely not so new facility. Is that correct?
That's
That's
right.
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 I mean, it's really exciting. So now, but it is your own building now for the first time. Is that correct?
Yeah, just as of toward the end of March. Yeah.
Wow, is that cool? Congratulations.
Yeah.
Anyway, I should mention that Brian has been active in theater for most of his life, always in a behind the scenes capacity. And you might have seen him. I missed that show. You mentioned Madlock. You were once in Madlock as an extra.
I was for about 15 seconds in one episode, so
I
blink
missed
and
it.
missed it.
Okay. Anyway, he teaches literature at Limestone University in South Carolina. Has been active with Tryon Little Theater since moving to the area. With Tryon Little Theater, he's worked as stagehand, stage manager, and or assistant director in a variety of shows, including The Drowsy Chaperone, Almost Maine, Dancing at
That's
Move. Help me on it. Thank you. The Humans, I Love You, You're Perfect Now, Change, a whole bunch of other stuff. Shakespeare and Friends. Also, he's done scenery, he's done other things as well. But I have to say, Brian, I have to thank you for sending me the introduction because I love the last part of it. If I can share it with you, and we'll give a
Please.
shout out to somebody. But this is his first time as a solo director, and the experience has been wonderful. Many thanks to everyone, but especially to his mom, Mary Catherine, for taking him to see Cramp the Donkey in elementary school and showing how two people in a costume can bring magic to life. It's funny, you still remember that show?
I still do. It was at the auditorium at Shelby High School.
Okay. Were you in the show?
Oh no, I was an audience member. I was probably in third grade, and it was the first time that I'd been to see a real play, anything other than a school pageant or something like that. And it was just the most magical thing I've ever seen.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you then, beyond that, so I know you have a lot of behind the scenes experience, have you acted before?
I have, but in very limited capacities. I did a couple of shows in college. I was always in the chorus of big shows. I did something with Charlotte Children's Theater not too long after I graduated from college, so that was a very long time ago now. But pretty much I've always just been behind the scenes. I'm much more comfortable helping to make the show work than having people look at me.
Well, I ask you that for a reason, and I want Laura to hear this reason as well. But I have this idea for a fundraiser, and nobody's done this yet, Laura. But I think everybody should recreate the very first role they ever did. For example, so you
I,
said you were in college. Were
I
you
love
in,
my first role.
were you in anything before college? You said high school, elementary school, pageants,
I
anything?
was in two shows in high school. One of them was with Laura, actually. We were in Bye Bye Birdie together. And then the next year, Laura had graduated, but I was in Greece.
Okay, but wouldn't that be cool then? So I don't know if you have a videotape of that production. But wouldn't that be cool then if you recreate your first role from Bye Bye Birdie or Grease or something, and we'll
That
do it
would,
where you laugh. But I have it as an idea as a fundraiser for Tryon. That everybody would come. We'd pack. Forgetting the little theater, we'd pack the other place. I think we get a lot of people there.
That's a
So,
fun idea. Yeah,
I,
thank you for that.
but I
Yeah.
really think it would be, and all the
Yeah.
actors would love it, and then especially actors such as you or other people who don't have a record of that first role, especially if they were like 6 years old or 7 years old to be a
Yeah.
tree or something.
Yeah.
So you then, Brian, now wanted to ask you also at the college, did you do any theater work at the college?
I have helped with a couple of the shows there. We no longer have a theater department at Limestone, unfortunately. But when we did, I helped consult with a few shows. We had two of our seniors that were graduating were doing a show, a two-person show as their senior showcase, and I was working pretty much as an assistant director on that show, helping them with it. And I also consulted on their production of the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which was a lot of fun.
Okay. And we'll come back to your role as director in just a little bit when we talk about the current show. But Laura, I'll ask you the same thing too. I don't yet know you. I know you in terms of being active in Tryon, but have you always acted, or when did you start acting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I really started acting in my earliest days, but
But other
my
than acting up as a kid, other than that kind of
no,
acting.
that's what I'm gonna say. Yes. So I mean, my first official real play was also, it was at the Children's Theater of Charlotte, and I played a spider and an elf in The Hobbit. Um, and I was 15 years old, and so I've been acting since then. I studied acting at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts,
Okay.
and I originally am from Minnesota. After I graduated high school, I went back up to Minnesota for a time, but I've lived in North Carolina for probably about half my life, so I consider myself a North Carolinian. My mother's from South Carolina, so but anyway, yeah, I've been doing theater all my life, and I have co-founded 3 different theater companies, small independent theater companies. Um, one up in the Twin Cities, where I was in the community for quite a while, and then one in Charlotte. My husband and I lived in Charlotte for about 8 years or so in the early 2000s. And then we moved up here to the mountains, where I'm very, very happy to be. um, and I have my own company now called Solstice Theater. And recently, just at the beginning of November, I came on here at Tryon Little Theater as the new executive director. So wearing a lot of different hats.
So back to that first role. So you were 15 in that first role, you
Yeah,
said?
yeah,
Do you remember that role?
I can.
Okay, but
Yeah.
the question I asked Brian as well, I assume do we have a tape of that somewhere or a record of it somewhere?
I don't think there's a tape of mine.
There's
No,
not.
no, but I remember the lines. He said,
Okay.
nasty thick skins they have, to be sure. But I'll
Well,
wager there's good juice inside.
I am impressed. Well, like I said, and I'll even offer to help you with it, but if you ever like that fundraising idea,
Well, it is. It's a clever idea.
yeah, I'd be glad to help
About
you
it.
with it. I just think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think it'd be not only fun, but I think it'd be so popular, we wouldn't be able to do it at your new home. We'd have to do it at what the other, you share a facility, you do other stuff at another theater, right? Is that
Well,
correct?
we don't share a facility.
Right.
Are you thinking of the Tryon Fine Arts Center?
Right, you do stuff
Yeah,
there, right? Is
we
that
do.
correct?
We do performance. We usually do our big musical of the
Mhm.
season there. But we're 2 separate organizations.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, we do, and we usually do our summer youth production there as well.
Now, the question I ask a lot of actors, so you wear many hats, you're an executive director as well. Have you ever directed?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So the question I ask, and I ask especially of actors, do you have a preference as to acting or directing?
It's interesting. I mean, as I get older, I'm you sort of start to lose your nerve about acting, sometimes, and it's this such a you just really have to be on point every moment of what you're doing, whereas with directing, it's a little bit more, you're not in the you're not the center of focus, in that moment. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Anyway.
no, but the reality is, and I ask this of a lot of actors, the reality is a lot of actors say they prefer directing, but they don't tell me the truth, Brian, because the truth is they don't have to memorize lines that way,
Well, that's
so.
part of it. That's part of the losing your nerve feeling,
Okay.
It's not only that, but just the emotional vulnerability that's necessary and all of those things. I once said that acting, depending on the show, some acting is like being on the bomb squad. After a while, you start to lose your nerve.
Interesting. So for the benefit of folks who don't know Tryon Little Theater, and they really should know it, talk a little bit about it, where it is, and what kind of stuff you do there.
Well, Tryon is a wonderful little town in Polk County, North Carolina. We're sort of between Hendersonville, North Carolina, Forest City, North Carolina, and the Greenville-Spartanburg area in South Carolina. We're sort of right in the middle of that. And we are a community theater. We've been around since 1948. Is that correct?
Yeah, last year we celebrated our 75th anniversary.
Yes. So we've been in the community for a very long time, and we have people that will occasionally come in and remember a show that this company did in 1978 or something, long before either of us were involved here. And we do every year we put together a season of things that are going to appeal to this community. We also like to do things that are going to challenge the community. So we do some classics, we do some new things, we do some slightly cutting edge things, and we draw actors in particular and designers from all over the area. We have people that come in from all of the places that I just mentioned, Hendersonville, Forest City, Spartanburg, Greenville, to be part of our company, which is wonderful.
Also, Laura, if you would too, talk about the facility, because we were just talking about it before. It's kind of a neat story that you had this facility where I've seen stuff, and all of a sudden now it became you now where's own it or run it or manage it. What happened?
Yeah, well, I do not know the exact number of years that TLT has been in residence in this building. I think it's something like 17, 18 years, something like that. So they moved down here and basically named it the workshop, and I think that was to be in comparison to the Triumph Fine Arts Center, because there a lot of performances were happening up there, but this was going to be like the smaller black box space, right? And over the years, it's really sort of become the home of TLT. So this is the home space, but the company has been renting it all of these years. And it was finally just this year, kind of spearheaded by our current board president, that we finally took the leap and bought the building. And so now we own this building, and we're right here on Trade Street. It's sort of the main drag in Tryon. And so we have, lots of thoughts about how we can grow into the future with this. So yeah, it's exciting.
Very exciting. We'll give a shout out. You mentioned the person who's president of the board. Who is that person?
Yes, his name is Mark Sawyer.
Okay, yeah, I know Mark, and that's pretty exciting then to take over the theater. And talk about the fact that so you do other things. So you do a season of shows, but what else happens that will be happening at the theater?
A season of shows is enough.
No, I'm saying will you offering courses as well?
We don't really offer courses right now. We are, we've got one employee, and that's me. And a very busy board trying to just make the season happen. So I mean, we have a little bit that we sometimes will do in the summer, along with our youth production. We'll do some little adjunct type workshops and things, but we don't have any current kind of education program.
And talk a little bit about, you said the youth program. So you do have a youth program there as well?
We do a youth production in the summer.
Right.
And
and that's going to be what?
Yeah, so sometimes there are some like small workshops and things that will go along with that production.
Mm-hmm.
And so the youth production is going to be what?
It's going to be Bye Bye Birdie, the show that we met on.
Yes.
Oh, is it really? Okay. And so you're already, I guess it's coming to it's May. Are you starting to work on that now, or?
Yeah, they've had auditions.
They have?
Yeah, and they're getting. I think they've started with a few rehearsals. I think they're going to start as soon as school's out. They're going to start in full swing with the rehearsals. So, and the production will be July 18th through the 21st at the Triumph Fine Arts Center.
Okay, I mentioned I think to a colleague of yours. Let me know about that too. I'd love to do a show on that as well.
Sure.
We'll get maybe we'll get one of the actors from that show, as well too.
Yeah.
So we go from then. The two of you have been working kind of, which is really cool. You've actually worked together for a long period of time. We've known each other for just a couple of years. Tell me how the importance of being earnest came about.
Oh gosh, well, as I suppose is probably true with most theater companies, we have a group of people. In this case, it's called the Play Selection Committee, who meets to decide what our season is going to be. We wanted to do a classic play this year, and the importance of being earnest was one that had come up a few different times in past seasons as a possibility. Tryon Little Theater has performed it in the past, but it's been a very long time. I think it was 1980 was the last time. So it's certainly been quite a long time. And we decided to put it on the season this year. And I had been involved in so many productions in a backstage or in a sort of assisting capacity. But this was a show I happen to know particularly well. I studied it in graduate school and have written about it. And when it came time to choose directors, it sort of everybody sort of took a step back and looked at me, and I was like, hey, I guess it's my turn, isn't it? So I've had the great privilege of being able to lead this production, and it's been going wonderfully.
That's pretty exciting, I imagine, that you've been an assistant director, you've helped out in other shows,
Mhm.
but to be a director for the first time, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And so talk about then the process. So the play selection committee chose the play to do this current season, and the play's going to run again. It's actually in the middle of the run right now, right? You did the first week, and it has one more weekend this coming weekend. Was it Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Thursday, Friday, and we've got 2 shows on Saturday. We've got a matinee and an evening on Saturday, and then Sunday matinee.
Okay. Oh, so that's pretty ambitious to do 2 shows on a.
Yes, it's exhausting, but
It
Well,
is.
I can
but
imagine. Yeah. So I assume, Laura, you've done 2 shows at a time like that?
yeah, I mean, I've done it. I've certainly done it before, and we did
Yeah.
it this past weekend. We had a school performance on Saturday this past weekend, so we did two shows on this past Saturday. We got some pizza for the cast in between, and
Yes.
it was a long day, but it was fun.
And talk about that. It's pretty cool. You did a school performance. That was what we invited school kids,
Mhm.
to attend it.
Yeah.
So how did it go over with them?
I think they really enjoyed it. I
Yes.
mean, you were out there, I was on stage, so I don't know.
Yes, I think they were trying to be very behaved young people. So I think they were at first almost afraid to laugh at it, but they eventually got really into the spirit of it and were enjoying it. I think they had a great time. They'd been studying it in their classes, and so it was just a great
Oh,
opportunity to be able to offer them the chance to come see it.
and if I can put you on the spot, Brian, for the folks who don't know the show, and there are some people out there, and since you studied it,
Mhm.
directed it, can you give kind of the Reader's Digest summary of it? And I'll restrict it to maybe 2 hours. Can you keep it
Oh,
down to two hours?
I think it would take about that much, but it's a story of it's a romantic comedy. It's also a story that has a lot of class consciousness and a lot of social critique in it. But we have a bunch of very wealthy, privileged people who are looking for love and think they may have found it, or they're not even sure what it is. And then all sorts of hijinks ensue with mistaken identities and secrets from the past and all sorts of things coming in. It's basically an entire bag of tricks in this play, and they all work together in a beautiful way. It's kind of amazing by the end of the play that what looks like a huge mass of loose ends has actually come together and made sense.
Now, I've seen the show many years ago, but there's also at least one movie version, or how many movie versions were there?
I think there are 2 that I know
There
of.
are two. There's one from, oh gosh, maybe about 15 years ago or so, and then there's one from much
Like the
longer ago, the
70s, yeah.
70s or so.
Right.
And I'm sure there must be some from back in the 30s and 40s, but I'm not familiar with them.
And that's vaguely, I recall, an old version. But let me ask you this, Laura, in terms of a show, what's your feeling about being an actor or being in a show, and Brian as director, to seeing the movie before you do the show or afterward? Do you have a feeling about that?
I saw the movie some years ago.
Right.
And I have to say, I mean, I saw the movie, the one with Judi Dench and
Reese
Reese
Witherspoon.
Witherspoon, yeah. And I, they made some choices in that movie that I don't agree with. They made it was very naturalistic. And I think they probably chose to do that because it was film, but the play is a farce, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's this funny play, and I feel like they toned it down too much, in my
Mhm.
opinion. So our production is quite different from what you would see in the movie. I mean, the story is the same, but I think ours is funnier.
I do too.
But the question I'm asking, Laura, and I'll ask Brian the same question too. For actors, do you think that's a good or bad idea to see a movie before they do the show?
Sometimes you can't avoid it, but
Right.
I think if I had the opportunity to avoid it, it would depend on the role. If there was something that I was needing to research, sometimes you can really learn a lot from what the work that they've done in the movie, doing research and stuff. If it's something where it's a really iconic character, or I mean, I think it's hard to say. It would be a case by case basis, in my opinion.
And your point's a good one, because I'm trying to think of if there was a kind of character you said, or an actor who did it, which is a classic, you'd worry
Right.
about trying to do it. You don't want to do it the same way. You don't want to be Judi
Mhm.
Dench, or you don't want to be
Unless
right.
you're there, unless that, that the audience is going to be expecting it to be
Right.
that particular kind of, that's why I'm saying it's a case by case thing, it's a question of whether you, I mean, you have to make that choice for yourself as an actor and with your director. Are you going to lean into that? Are you going to give the audience, a sort of version of what they know, or are you going to try and give them something totally different? And that would be different, I think, for any different production you would do.
I guess that's the advantage of this particular show, in that even though it's a classic and it's been around a lot of years, a lot of people still don't know it, or you know the name, but they
Right.
haven't seen the play or haven't seen the movie.
Right. Or they don't have a particular expectation that it has to be exactly a certain way,
Right. And Brian, the same thing too. So when you got chosen as director,
Mhm.
did you go back and try to find the film, or did you look at the film?
No, I didn't actually. I knew it, I suppose, relatively well because I'd seen it when it came out, and I've in my classes I have taught the play before, and I usually show a couple of scenes from the film. But I consciously didn't go back and watch it for many of the reasons that Laura says. One of the things that I think I can only assume in the filmmaker's mind must have been a prerogative is to make sure that they realized it was an adaptation and that they were taking advantage of what film allows that either cannot be done on stage or would be very difficult to do on stage. And so the play takes place in essentially two locations. The film, in the first 5 minutes of the film, the actors are just all over London in 100 different places, and they're flying
Right.
around like crazy, and it's a lot of fun. But one of the things I think it misses is that the play is driven by the language. The energy of the play comes from the words people are saying, and in the film they replaced a lot of that energy with literal energy, with people moving into different locations. And obviously we couldn't do that on stage, and I wouldn't want to, because I think letting the language speak for itself is what makes the play work.
You're talking, and it reminds me of the fact that um, I'm so disappointed that they don't have classic comic books anymore, because one of the great things you could do as a kid, I don't know if you remember them, but you didn't have to read a book, you didn't have to read a play, you could just do the classic comic version. And they don't have that anymore, right? I think they're no longer in business. But that would have been a great way how I got through high school literature, I think, by reading. Don't tell my literature
This
teacher.
nerd actually read the books.
He did, right. He said, and he teaches it. Well, talk with folks if you would too. You have how many in the cast, Brian?
There are,
I'll count them.
you'd think I would know offhand.
11.
11.
So it's a
Gosh, that seems like a lot.
good size cast.
Yeah.
Talk about some of them, Brian, or you want to just give a shout out to some of the folks in the play, since you're directing them.
Oh, well, we've had the great luck to have just a wonderful cast. But the advice that people gave me when I was first starting directing was to cast well and then get out of everybody's way. And I think I
Right.
was lucky that I managed to do that. We have a really talented group of people. There's Luke Lauder, who's playing Algernon Moncrief. He's somebody who's been on stage with us at Tryon Little Theater several times. His counterpart is Kip Arrowwood, who's playing Jack Worthing. He's also been in several shows here. Obviously, we have Laura, who's playing Lady Bracknell. Hilary MacArthur, she's making her debut here at Tryon Little Theater, as is Laura on stage, playing Gwendolyn Fairfax, one of the young women that is a love interest in the show.
Hillary is playing Gwendolyn. I'm playing
Oh,
Lady
you're playing Lady Bracknell. Hilary's playing Gwendolyn.
Yeah.
Maggie Carter is a Tryon local who's been in many shows here, and she's playing Cecily Cardew, who's the other romantic interest, I guess one of the other romantic interests, because we also have Miss Prism, an interesting character played by Molly Douglas Turner, who's a longtime Tryonite and has been on stage here many, many times. And her counterpart, I guess we would call it, Reverend Chasuble, is played by Paul Noga, who's new to Tryon Little Theater. And then we have we have Jim Powell, who's playing Lane the butler. And then we have three other people who are new to Tryon Little Theater, all playing servants in the play. Kat Jones, who's from Greenville, is playing Merriman. And then Greg Coots and his son Seth Coots, who are playing footmen, who are her assistants. And it's been so much fun having these people in these servants roles because they have very few lines, but we've been trying to work with them a lot to give them more to do on stage.
And they're very funny.
They're very funny. And it's really just sharpened I think a lot of the class consciousness of the play, because you see these ridiculous wealthy people who basically are contributing nothing to society. And then we have this group of 4 servants that are always in the background, and just from their facial expressions alone are commenting on these rich people that they're working for. And I think it's made the play a lot richer.
Who should see the play? Who is it geared at?
Oh, anybody who's old enough to understand language, I think. It's a play that I think, it's a very wordy play. There's tons of work. You have a few lines, don't you?
Yes, and some of them are very long and convoluted.
Some of them are very long.
But funny, but like that's the
very
thing,
funny.
really funny.
And there's a lot of physical comedy on stage. So I think even if you weren't, not that I'm encouraging anyone to do this, but even if you weren't paying attention to the words, I think you would enjoy watching the people. But it's a play that seems to be good for all ages, because basically everyone is made fun of in equal. Young people who are young and idealistic are made fun of. The older people who think they understand the world are made fun of. The oldest people of all who've seen everything in the world and yet they're still as stupid as everybody else get made fun of. So I think there's something for everybody.
How long have you been in rehearsal for this?
7 weeks did we rehearse?
I think, yeah, if you count the final tech week, just about, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I encourage people to see this, because they don't necessarily realize, they come to see a show, Laura, and think, hey, that's easy, and it's a movie, a 2-hour thing. But 7 weeks you've been working on this. And
it's a lot of work. Yeah, any play or musical is a lot of work.
It
really is. And let me ask you folks, it's one final question, if I can. In terms of when this run is over after this weekend, what's next?
Well,
we're excited about it. So as I mentioned, there's this summer show, which is going to be Bye Bye Birdie, and that's going to be July 18th through the 21st. And then our upcoming season for 24-25, we typically do 4 main stage shows in a year. And so in the fall, in September, we are going to do the Great American Trailer Park Musical. Well, and that's going to be right here at our workshop space. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
it is.
And then in November, we're doing Miss Bennet, Christmas at Pemberley,
Fun show.
which it's a kind of a sequel to Pride and Prejudice. And so I think that's going to be delightful. And then we're really excited in the late winter, basically it's essentially the beginning of March. We're going to do Gypsy. Some think it's one of the greatest musicals ever.
Sure.
And we're excited about that. And so that's the beginning of March. And then in May, in this time slot that Ernest is in this year, in May next year, we're doing 4 Old Broads.
Yes, that's a fun comedy about a beauty pageant in a retirement home and an Elvis impersonator and all sorts of weird things going on. It should be a lot of fun.
Even describing it sounds like it's a lot of fun. If folks want to find out more about the theater or get tickets for this weekend, what's the best bet, Laura?
Okay, so you can get tickets at our website, which is just tltinfo.org. And the phone number is 828-859-2466. And just leave us a message if you can, and our box office folks will get back to you. But tltinfo.org is probably the best way, as long as you're familiar with the internet, which, you've got people of all types. So,
I'll have you repeat that one more time. If folks want to see the show this weekend, the time starts Friday night. What is it? 2 on Saturday? Thursday. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights at 7:30. And then on Saturday, we have a matinee at 3, and on Sunday, we have a matinee at 3. So
you still have
shows.
You still have a busy weekend coming up as you wind down this.
Especially on Saturday.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it sounds it. Anyway, I'd like to thank you, Brian Holcomb, and also Laura. I'll try to get it right at Depta, Peal.
Yes, that's
I
right.
got it right. Thank you for being my guest on this edition of the Blaine's World webcast. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. Hopefully we'll see you. If not this weekend, we'll see you sometime soon. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thanks a lot.